and really understand your world. And then thirdly, it's aspirational. People come to Berkeley to get out of their comfort zones, not to copy what everyone else is doing, but to feel a welcoming space where they can question the status quo, think beyond themselves, and really be aspirational in thinking about the organizations and the leaders that they'd like to become and to influence. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to a very dear friend and colleague, a man about the world, Professor Greg LeBlanc, who has such depth and breadth in a variety of different areas. He is our faculty director. Professor LeBlanc is an expert in data analytics, strategy, fintech, AI, finance, and you can learn a lot of valuable, insightful information in a very invigorating and stimulating environment. So, Professor LeBlanc, without further ado, take it away.
Well, thank you, Christina. I would challenge that description somewhat because you said that I was an expert in these things. And I think in today's world, either no one is an expert or everyone has the capacity to be an expert because the fields are moving so quickly that the minute you get to a point where you think you're an expert, you start falling behind. And indeed, that was sort of the motivation behind this program, because in a world that changes so quickly, as a manager, you have to figure out a way to get up to speed as quickly as possible with whatever new technology trend comes down the road. So we've been doing this emerging tech management at College of Engineering for a while. And starting last year, we decided that we were really going to emphasize the AI aspects of new technology because we think that, obviously this is probably the most transformational technology since the advent of electricity, but we also know that it's not the last of these waves of innovation. And so what we want is we want to create a group of managers that have the flexibility, that have the kind of, the muscle, right? And that have the capability to ingest and adopt new skills, new knowledge, new technology as quickly as possible, and to get their organizations to a point where they can continuously get up to speed as quickly as possible. There was an article that just came out that I just posted on one of my Facebook pages that said that MIT announced 95% of all these AI implementations at various corporations are considered failures. And so, why is it a failure? It's because these organizations think that all they need to do is bolt on the technology. And what we know, of course, from organizational design is that you can't bolt these things on. You actually have to change the way in which the organization is architected. You have to change the incentive systems. You have to change the communication channels. You have to change the way the teams are organized. You have to change the reporting channels. You have to change pretty much everything. And most importantly, you have to change the way you lead and manage and delegate. And so the goal of this program, right, is to help managers bridge that divide between the business and the tech side of things. My background, I've spent most of my life at business schools, teaching in various business schools. I've taught at Wharton and Duke and Virginia, taught at Stanford, I've taught at Harvard, I've taught at Berkeley. And what I've learned is that the best business people are the people that understand enough technology to be dangerous, and so really can manage both sides of the house. And I think it's technology leaders who learn business, or business leaders that learn technology. That's the sweet spot. And if you can do that, then you will never find yourself unemployed. Okay, so before we dive into the program, maybe I'll just say a few words for those who are unfamiliar with Berkeley. Most of the people who participate in this program I wouldn't say most, perhaps Christina can correct me, but there's a substantial number of people who have participated in these programs that have some prior familiarity with Berkeley, either having gone through a degree program or maybe a certificate program. But they know what Berkeley is, and Berkeley has a very unique approach to education. Perhaps we can go to the next slide. And yeah, so right, We have created not only the largest number of venture-backed startups of any university on the planet, but we also have created a lot of very, very successful tech executives. And these tech executives, some of them have come from, of course, the business school. So I think Shantanu at Adobe came out of the Haas School. Matsu-san, he was an undergraduate in, I forget what he majored in. He may have majored in I don't know, physics or something. But we've had a lot of people that have come out of obviously business and economics, but we also, and I think this is really the beating heart of UC Berkeley, we've had people come out of the engineering school, and the engineering school has a reputation for creating, fantastic tech savvy people who can also manage. This program that we're doing is sponsored by the Sudarja Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology. And I think what makes our engineering school unique is that every engineering student at every level is exposed to business, right? And how you actually make your insight practical. So of course, Eric Schmidt was a Berkeley alum, Steve Wozniak, of course, plenty of others. And of course, we even have faculty members at Berkeley who are founders and continue to teach. Right? So the folks at Databricks, who are all billionaires, they come back to campus on a regular basis. I think some of them teach. I forget who it is. Is it Ali? No, it's Ian. Ian teaches. I think he still teaches intro to machine learning. And he's a billionaire. And so we have this continuous. I think of it as a porous background, porous frontier, porous boundary between business and academia. You can be a researcher, and you can start a company, and you can do that as a grad student. You can do this as a professor. Okay, so next slide, please. So because of this porous boundary, our program, which is a 5-day program, it's actually a 6-day program if you count the orientation day. Our 5-day program does combine academia and professional practice. And so we have 3 days on campus, and we have 2 days where we go out into the field and visit companies. Those 3 days on campus, we have some academics, such as myself and others from the engineering school, who give lectures to help provide the frameworks and the mental architecture to make sense of what the professionals will be saying. Then we bring in all sorts of professionals. Now, I don't have a list of the speakers that we had last year, but the list of speakers was absolutely fantastic. And all of them have one foot in academia and one foot in practice. So for instance, John Hagel, who headed up the Center for the Edge at Deloitte, such as Larry Keeley, who founded the design firm Doblin, which was later sold to Deloitte. And we have the former CEO of Mobile Iron, who came in and discussed his journey from an engineer to a founder to a CEO to a venture capitalist. We had Gamil Gran, who we actually visited them down at Mayfield, talking about how these venture capitalists, are thinking not only about helping companies to get started, but helping enterprise and legacy companies interface with startups. So I think of the themes that we covered, one is sort of data, obviously, and AI and how it's changing the world. But more importantly, organizational architecture, software centricity, customer centricity, modularity, APIs, MCP. How do you structure a company so that it can adapt to a changing environment? And then the third, and of course, that includes things like design thinking and lean startup, right? All of the trendy buzzwords that you've heard about, they only make sense if you know how to adopt them and know how to incorporate them. So those topics we get exposure to, but obviously, you learn them elsewhere. But we show how do you take lean startup and bring it in the company? How do you take design thinking and make it second nature inside the company? How do you think about making AI right work for you in every functional area of your company? And of course, that means you have to understand workflow and how workflow architecture and so forth. So among the visits that we did, we spent one day, I would say one day in Silicon Valley, and then one day, more in San Francisco. We visited AWS, we visited NVIDIA, we visited Mach 49, we visited Autodesk. For some of the other engineering programs, right? We visited Tesla, we visited Microsoft. We go to these companies and see them in their native habitat, right? Like, you know, like David Attenborough. We go and we observe them in the wild, and we get to see what it is that they do on the ground. And then, of course, we bring these folks to Berkeley. So the companies that we visit change every year, depending on availability, depending on what's hot. This year, hopefully, we'll visit some of the AI companies. C3 AI was a great visit. We met with the founder, Tom Siebel, who spent a lot of time with us. He's one of the most accessible billionaires that I've ever met. He shows up in his T-shirt and his khakis, and wanders around and talks to us about what it's like to build a bunch of different multi-billion-dollar companies, but more importantly, what it takes to help these companies, because that's what C3 AI does, help these companies to adopt these enterprise solutions at scale. Okay, so that's I think that's kind of a description of what we're trying to do with this program. And I should say, these programs, the kind of the magic of these programs is the community that you become a part of, right? Because, if you're sitting in a cubicle and getting this stuff streamed to you, that's one thing. But if you're going out with this group of people from all over the world, and I don't think we have a pie chart here, but we had people from the Middle East, we had people from the Far East, we had people from Europe, we had people from Latin America, we had people from the East Coast, which is like another country. And we had, of course, some people who were local, including some folks who were Haas MBA students, and we're going to hear from one of them in just a second. So that's pretty much a description of what we're trying to do and how we do it. And maybe we can move to the next slide. I thought it might be good for you to hear from someone who actually was there, because I can talk about what I like about the program. I can talk about why I think the program is valuable, but of course, that could all be puffery. So it's best to hear from someone who has actually been through this. Kishan, great to see you. So Kishan is a founder. Of course, he also has corporate background. He is a Haas alum. And your startup, I think your startup was founded after, of course, the program, right? So hopefully we inspired you a little bit, maybe to get out there and do some stuff. So, so maybe you can tell us just a bit about, about your experience with the program, but more importantly, you've been at Berkeley.
Yeah.
What is it that Berkeley does for you? Does it help you to see new possibilities, opportunities? Does it change the way you think? Does it, rewire your mental operating system? Like, what is it? What has it done for you?
Yeah. Nice to see you, Professor. Just for everybody, I've been with Berkeley for the last couple of years. I'm pretty much done in May this year. I was doing my executive MBA. So I joined Berkeley for one single reason. That is, I just came out of Apple, had great success at Apple. I built their first industrial engineering team. We saved them $1.2 billion. But how do I take what I know and apply that to industry elsewhere? That was the big question. So I joined Berkeley. And going through the executive MBA program, I'm taking my startup idea, refining it. And towards the end, what I've realized is I have a very good understanding of my product and like the problem I'm trying to solve. But what does it mean in the context of AI and the rest of the industry? That's when Professor LeBlanc came up, or at least I came across the Emerging Tech Week. I took it. The biggest thing that will help you do is see or go to these companies, like most specifically C3 AI is one, NVIDIA is one, Autodesk. Go in there and get understanding that is beyond the headlines, because you go online, you find information. But what helped me specifically is prepare for these questions that definitely VC is going to ask. How can you go beat like a $1 billion company or a few $1 billion company like Siemens? What's your USP? We do have answers, but being through the valley and understanding like what's going on, I was a lot more prepared. I think, Professor, to your question, how did this help? It helped me a lot on preparing both the pitch deck, the due diligence on how to address these questions on what's happening in AI in general. So that way, during that 1 week, C3 AI was definitely the highlight. I think Tom Siebel, him talking about AI, how he built it ground up, how he's seeing the future definitely gives us a very good understanding how the market is kind of evolving. Same thing with Nvidia, how soon, like, just holding their those racks and understanding like how they're going to work and what's their iteration process going to be and what are their current constraints. All of this beyond the headlines is what I think was super helpful for me. Yeah, and successfully we raised our pre-seed a couple of weeks ago. So it's all going great. Thanks to you.
So let me ask you this. A lot of people think that the skills you need to be a successful founder are different from the skills that you need to be a successful, manager at a large corporation like Apple. And I think people in the Bay Area, they challenge that. I think that's the kind of view for people outside of the Bay Area. Here, I think we see people moving from founder to manager, back to founder to manager. They start a company, it grows, and they scale themselves with it, and then they leave and start from scratch all over again. What do you see in terms of the commonalities? Like, why do you see that? Do you see there like a single kind of style of management that really works in tech-centric businesses?
I think a lot of that is, same thing with the Haas principles, questioning the status quo and so on. But one specific visit, I think I can answer this question very well. Mac 49, that talks about entrepreneurship. That's what I've done at Apple. And everything I've solved at Apple is like entrepreneurship, like giving them ideas, building products, making them successful. But coming out, there are forces that are different. But I think that kind of explains the logic on transitioning from one to another, entrepreneurship to entrepreneurship. In my opinion, a lot of principles apply, but those external forces, understanding them, how you need to adapt, those are a few things that I think I've learned through the program. Mark 49 specifically, I think we spent like 4 hours there that talks about how the transition, how can you build innovation, being a manager inside, and how is that different from building outside. I thought that was very useful.
Now, the other question I have for you is, there was a time in the past where you had the technical people over on one side of the boardroom and the business people on the other side of the boardroom. And I think, if a company's structured that way in today's world, it's going to fail. Yeah. How do you integrate the kind of business side of your brain and the tech side of your brain?
Because earlier, at least in my experience, we were always talking about features, the value, and it starts that way. But we are actually going the other way around now, because AI has made it, at least like in terms of tech, it has leveled a lot of playing fields for a lot of people. So it's all starting back with the differentiation. Like, what is that differentiation in terms of value to customer? Because the idea we have, I'm sure 2-3 other people have, but in terms of what is that unique point that we bring in, and we can show that extra edge. So we are starting there and going back to figuring out how to build that. So it's not the other way around. That's one of the biggest things we are seeing, at least in how we are approaching our customers and showing our differentiation from our competitors. We are going backwards.
Well, last question, and I don't know if we can open it up to any questions, but the last question, I remember in McKinsey came out with this article back in 2015 that said something like, we're going to face this enormous shortage of data scientists, and of course, then we came up with all these wonderful no-code, low-code solutions that, I would teach to my MBA students. And the same next, of course, everyone's saying, oh, you got to be an AI engineer. And of course, we know, well, that's not true either, right? Because there's all this vibe coding. And I taught a course on agentic AI this past spring to the MBAs. Do you think that the democratization of these tools and these technologies, right, and the ability for, any founder to just start coding from day one, I mean, if that's the case, then, what is the key skill you need to have to be a successful leader if, anybody can master the technology to some degree?
That's a great question, Professor. And we are trying to answer the same thing. I think last few weeks being with VCs, this question comes up again and again. And I think our subject matter experts, because everybody who is, I'm assuming, coming to this course have been in their professional career to a certain extent of time. And I can pretty much tell every one of those experiences are unique, and AI kind of takes that to a next level in terms of either spreading it around or building automation, or even spreading the value around of this particular person's or a team's expertise. AI is kind of magnifying the value that's already there. Historically, you would have a technical team build a solution, train people, But that whole time, that lead time to come to a solution, AI has brought it down. So what really differentiates now is the person and the experience they bring
Yeah.
with.
And the speed. I mean, I think nowadays, if you take, a couple months to develop, build, and deploy, you're going to miss the boat, right? And so it's amazing. I've seen some of my students start these companies, and within a matter of weeks, they're up and running, they're in the field, they've got customers, they've got revenue. It's really remarkable. And so, the organizational architecture from the 20th century is just simply not built for speed. And
Exactly.
I have this thing. I've been teaching data science for a long time, and I say, whoever has the most data wins. It's not true anymore. These big companies, they have so much data, but they can't access it. They can't integrate it. They can't act on it. And so these startups that don't have really any data, it's cold start. They're coming in and they're just laying waste to them. And so it's really remarkable. I know a lot of people are scared about how fast things are moving. I'm excited. And I think the world can be divided into the people who fear change and the people who get really stoked about it. And I think this program is for the people who are really excited about change, or the ones who are afraid of change, but they don't want to be afraid anymore. And so they need to see how, this is really an insane opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity, I think, for people who are smart and ambitious.
Yeah.
If we don't have any questions from the audience, perhaps we can just turn it back to Christina, who can talk briefly about, how you can get in this program, how you can apply, and how you can enroll and show up in November.
Thank you, Professor LeBlanc and Kishan, for a very stimulating and invigorating conversation. I also wanted to add that this program is being run in partnership with another academic partner, CKGSB of Hong Kong. And so
Beijing.
that also Beijing adds to a greater global perspective. We are offering, so the best way to apply, if you have a team you'd like to send, you can email me directly at susac, SUSAC, at berkeley.edu. Or you could just go ahead directly and apply online. We are offering the attendees of this info session a 15% discount code. We've got the QR code. It's info15.
Wait, do they get that if they're watching the recording too?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So thank you for clarifying that. So we look forward to welcoming you. Thank you so much. And go Bears.
Yeah. Go Bears. We do have a couple minutes left for questions. Did we get any questions to pop up?
I do not see questions. Dara, Keith?
Well, if you do have questions, you can email either myself, particularly about any questions related to the content and the goals and the ambitions of the program, or about any of the registration details, timing, logistics. Feel free to email Christina. And of course, I'm just LeBlanc at berkeley.edu, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Well, that calls it a wrap. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to welcoming you on the Berkeley campus November 2nd to 7th. Thank you.